Hello, everybody, and welcome to a sales story workshop that is going to change the way that you look at how you tell the stories that you tell about your business, about your services, and about the value that you give to your clients. So we're going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking through this idea of a sales story, and we're going to put it into the context of the hero's journey. And we'll talk more about that later. But sales stories are at the core of what we do with the soul-centered selling methodology. We'll talk more about that at the end of the workshop as well. So who is this workshop for? Well, really it's for anyone who has a product or a service to sell, anyone who really struggles with having to sell, and anyone who really doesn't like to sell as well. But really anyone who is looking to grow their business, because to grow a business, you must grow your sales. What are you going to need today? Well, I'm asking for your focus. So turn off your notifications and let's spend the next 15 to 20 minutes together focused on sales stories. Please bring an open mind. It might be a little bit different than some of the things that you've learned before about how to sell. So please have an open mind. You might want to have a journal for note-taking and possibly for your story writing. You can use those old school journals, the old pen and paper, or a digital one, certainly. And you can also go to my website at soulcenteredselling.com and download a PDF worksheet. You may have received that as well when you registered for this webinar. So you can follow along with the process of writing your story on that PDF worksheet. So who is the teacher? Well, my name's Mark D. Targiani, and for 30 plus years, I've been an English teacher, a sales professional, and a coach. I've worked in small companies and large companies. I've worked as an entrepreneur. I've worked through IPOs. I've seen a lot of things over the 30 years, what works in sales and what doesn't work. I'm the world's foremost integrity sales growth specialist, and my big, hairy, audacious goal is to elevate the sales profession and the people, how people sell and how people view salespeople. And to that end, I'm the creator of Soul-Centered Selling, the methodology and the process that we use to help people who have to sell but hate to sell get from where they are to where they want to be. Enough about me. Who is it that you like better? Do you like a salesman like this Alec Baldwin, Glengarry Glen Ross guy? Or do you like a storyteller? Would you rather be sold something, or would you rather be told a story? Well, I'm thinking that most of you are answering that you'd rather have a story told to you than be sold something. And that's something to keep in mind as we go through this process, because storytelling is much more effective as a sales strategy than the old always be closing mentality put forth by this character in the movie and by a lot of the sales trainings that are out there. So let's take a look at these. What do these have in common? Star Wars, Beowulf, the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the Wizard of Oz. Well, yep, they're all stories, that's for sure. Some of them are in poetic form, some of them are films, but they all have something in common. And what they have in common is this structure of the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is a story structure that Joseph Campbell first really penned and wrote a great deal about. And it's a story structure that is extremely familiar to us and really almost into our DNA. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that hero's journey. You know, think of Star Wars. The hero is Luke Skywalker, who has forced out to go onto a journey and has to overcome all these obstacles along the way, has to go through a transformation, has to figuratively slay a dragon before he returns home as the hero. And that common structure is something that we're going to be looking at today in this presentation. You know, stories are extremely valuable. Through time, They've been ingrained into our psyche. They've helped to learn and bond people across generations and across cultures and communities and occupations. They've actually helped with the survival and development of civilizations. And they certainly give people a sense of belonging to a wider community. And ultimately, stories help to explain the unexplainable. If you think of the creation myths of the Roman and Greek cultures, or if you think of something that you're trying to explain to a customer, how you create value, very tough to explain that. But through a story, you can really illustrate that. So stories have been extremely valuable throughout history, but ultimately, storytelling is one of those things that makes us human. When somebody says to you, once upon a time, we have a way of relaxing. We have a way of tuning in and listening because we love being told stories. We love going to movies, reading books, being told stories by storytellers, having people tell a story to their little child. How many of you who are parents have had your kids say, "Tell me a story, Mommy, tell me a story, Daddy"? It's those things, one of those things that makes us human. It's a thing that we connect around, and it's a thing that we can share emotion around. Stories are extremely powerful. Steve Jobs said that the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller, because the storyteller sets the vision, values, and the agenda of an entire generation to come. How we tell stories helps to create our future. Stories are extremely powerful. Think about how you use stories as a leader or in your own business development and sales. How do you use stories? Are you aware of the stories that you're telling? And are your stories being told with a purpose behind them? Paul Zach's done a lot of research, brain research, on the effect that stories have. And he has a famous study that he concluded that stories are powerful because they transport us into other people's worlds. But in doing that, they change the way our brains work and potentially change our brain chemistry. And that's what it means to be a social creature. So there's actually changes going on in our brains when we're being told different stories. Anybody who's ever cried at a movie certainly knows the power that a story can have to change an emotion. So those changes that go on are something that we need to be cognizant of as sales storytellers and understand the power that we have in using our words. And there's a piece of storytelling that's an important part of it that we're going to talk a little bit more about. But ultimately, and this is Ken Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and this is what I love when it comes to sales: to hell with facts, we need stories. People remember stories, they don't remember facts. And it's very important that as we are going out and doing our business development and talking to prospective clients, that we realize the paradigms that we're in. And the worst paradigm to be in, quite honestly, is a salesperson to a buyer. Think about when you walk onto a car lot. People know you're a buyer. That salesperson comes up. We tend to put our defenses up. What's this guy going to try to do? He's going to try to steer me towards something that we don't want. He's asking me questions because he's trying to pull out information from me. And we're very guarded when we're a buyer being sold to by a salesperson. Think about a different paradigm. Think about a storyteller to an audience. Again, what I said earlier is when we hear that once upon a time, our defenses go down. We relax, we listen, we focus. So to hell with facts, we need stories, and we should be a storyteller, not a salesperson. So let's take a look at a story here. Probably one that we're all familiar with. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So that's a story. And what do we know about that story? Well, we know a few things. We know that something's missing, as my slide says. But what do we know? We know that the hero is Humpty. We know he's sitting on the wall. We know he's probably an important guy because the king's horses and the king's men are all there. We know that Humpty is having a challenge. He's challenged with balance. Okay, and there's certainly a transformation that occurs as well because we go from whole Humpty to pieces of Humpty. But there is one thing missing. And this is not a great sales story as Humpty is being told. What's missing? Let's take a look at a revised version of Humpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men used glue to put Humpty together again. So in this sales story, what do we have? We have a solution. There is a solution to the problem. We have a splattered Humpty. We're using glue to put them together again. Now, my first sales job ever, I actually sold adhesives. So this is near and dear to me. And 3M, Loctite, one of those, we could probably put Humpty together with that. But the key to the story is that there's a solution. And now that Humpty is back together again, he can continue to be the hero and he can move on in his transformed life. So what do we have? What are the parts of that story? We talked about the hero being Humpty, the ideal client. Very important that your ideal client is your hero. We'll talk more about that in a second. There's challenges, the roadblocks that define the current state of your client's world. Humpty was on a wall. He was having a hard time balancing. Those were his challenges. There's that transformation from Humpty being apart to Humpty being back together, which is that solution that leads our hero into a future state. And then there's that heroic return where the hero comes back, Humpty gets put back up on the wall, proud and balancing once again. So let's talk a little bit about the hero's journey. And this is the idea of these acts that I just talked about with those 4 pieces. You know, there's the beginning of the story where we have the reluctant hero. We're going to take a look at the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy, who goes off into the wild world because she feels like she's not loved at home and she has to go out into this world and gets cut off by that crazy twister that comes. She goes into this new world, the land of make-believe there, where the Emerald Castle is. And as she's going into this new world and going along her road of trials, she's joined by a magical helper. And that, in that act 2, the guide, the magical helper, that's the salesperson, not the hero. The hero is your client. The salesperson is the guide. They go through another crossing, and then there's that transformation. There's that ability to slay the dragon, the figurative dragon, with help from that magical power and helped by the guide. So their reality is changed, as in Dorothy's case, she throws the water on the wicked witch who melts. And then there's the heroic return, where now, having slayed the dragon, the hero returns and is looked at in a different way. Is looked at by her organization, by her family, by whoever in your story, that they're looked at as a different way, as somebody who has solved a problem. So get out your worksheet if you have it. Get ready to write. We're going to start to write our 4 acts of our hero's journey sales story here. So the first act is going to be about your hero. And again, as I mentioned, it's not your product or your service or you. Your hero in your sales story is your ideal client. Who is that client? We're going to spend a little bit of time right now getting into your client's head. So you're going to be able to press pause here, take 5 to 10 minutes to brainstorm on this using the prompts to help you. But ultimately, we want to choose a specific person. Get a name for that person. Make that person real. Think about what that those pain points are for that particular ideal client. What are the things that they struggle with? What are the fears that they have? You know, we want to get down into that emotional part of that particular hero. What might be some of the objections that they have to your particular solution? Really importantly is understanding what success looks like for your hero. What does success look like? What's that future state going to look like? And then flip from that, what happens if she doesn't buy from you? What are the things that aren't going to change in the life, or how are things not going to be different? And ultimately, think about how her reality has changed, which is precipitating the look for your particular product or service. So maybe something doesn't work anymore, or maybe there is a new reality that needs to be looked at differently. Maybe it's data storage that has become too much or too expensive, and there's a new reality out there of how people can save money. So there are all sorts of different ways that reality can change. But how has the reality changed for that hero? So press pause right now. I'll join you on the next slide. All right, now that we know our hero, now we're going to get into that current state of where that hero is living. What's on this hero's road of trials? Something's changed. They're on a new road. Here's Dorothy on her yellow brick road. But what is the current state of your hero's world? What are those everyday occurrences, the depths of despair that they go to? What are those solutions that just don't cut it anymore for that particular hero? What are some of the challenges that your solution might meet for this particular hero? And how does the current state, these road of trials, how does that distract your hero from their core mission? And how do they ultimately fear on missing out of opportunities because of the current state and the way things are? So again, press pause here, spend another 5-10 minutes taking a look at the road of trials and the current state. And we'll see you for Act 3. All right, now we know our hero, we know the current state, and now we're going to look at that transformation, that future state, that I'm melting part in The Wizard of Oz when the Wicked Witch has water thrown on her. So grant your hero your magical power, that solution that you have. You know, how must they have a different approach and a different mindset? How is that transforming? What do everyday occurrences look like now for your hero? What's changed? And how is life better, cheaper, faster, more efficient, more secure? Whatever that change is, how is it better? And how has this future state become accessible to your hero through the magical power of your product or your solution or your service? So press pause, take a few minutes, and look at that future state. All right, now the best part, the heroic return. This is where your hero gets to go back to their company, to their board, to their employees, to their customers, and feel like a hero. So what does that feel like for your hero? What's the emotional state of what they're going to feel when this problem is solved, when there's been this transformation, when they've moved into this future state? How is life better after your product or your service of solution? And how have those challenges been averted and problems solved? How do her colleagues or their organization now view her? How is she looked at? How is the value that she brings to the organization changed? And ultimately, how's life for the hero? So let's spend a few more minutes and think about that hero, what it feels like to walk into that office, that boardroom, that manufacturing floor, whatever it is, as the hero who solved this problem with your help. Congratulations. you've written your 4 acts of your sales story. Now it's just a matter of pulling that together and putting those 4 pieces, the hero, the roadblocks, the transformation, and the return, and putting those things together into a story. You can use some transitions, but go ahead and spend the time to write this story out. Now, this is a story that can be very detailed and very long, and ultimately you're going to be telling different versions of this story. You know, you might come up with a short, a mid, and a long version of the story, right? You might be able to tell that short story at a networking affair, for instance. While you're in a sales call, you might tell the longer story of that version. And ultimately, you can write different sales stories with different ideal clients at the middle. So we get to have different stories for different ideal clients. So go ahead and take that time and pull together that sales story. All right, well, hopefully you've pulled that together right now. You've got a sales story that you're excited about that shows the journey that one of your clients would go to. And I would love to see and read your story. So if you would like to share that story with me, I'm certainly willing to give you feedback and give you a little bit of pointers here and there, but everyone needs a good editor, as the slide says. But feel free to email your story to me at mark@satoriss.com. That's mark at SATORISS.com. I look forward to reading these stories and seeing what you came up with and how you're putting your customer at the center of their own heroic journey. So in this time that we spent together, there's a few takeaways. You know, the power of story is extremely significant to this. And ultimately, humans buy on emotion and they use logic to justify. Those emotions are connected to through stories. And as we talked about, people putting their defenses down when they hear stories. Always look at your sales story from the point of view of your customer and not from your particular point of view. Very important. Remember that stories can change our brains and evoke that emotion, build that trust, and ultimately make us human with our prospects. And think of those paradigms as well. Focus on being a storyteller and not a salesperson. So thank you for spending that time and putting that effort into creating your sales story. I'd like to tell you a little bit about soul-centered selling and invite you to join our online community. And we're in the midst of a pre-launch right now, and that pre-launch is really exciting. It has so much value in it. There's one-on-one coaching with me around sales and how you're approaching sales. We're going to have live group coaching for the online community. There's going to be mastermind groups where you can leverage other people's experience and their challenges and what some of the things that they're doing to solve those challenges. We're going to provide you with accountability partners so you can stay on that track, because changing how you view sales and changing your attitude around sales is a process. You're going to learn how to write a sales story. Well, you've already done that. So we're one step into it. We're going to have master classes on your online presence and lead generation. How people get to know you online is important to ultimately your business growth. And once we change how you view sales and give you a whole new process to follow along the way, then you're going to want leads. We're going to have master classes on how you can generate more leads. And at the core of this is the 7-module digital training called Soul-Centered Selling. And in that, we dive into a lot of transformative stuff around your own sales story, how you view it, what your experiences have been, how to shift those experiences, and then a process to follow that's simple and effective and helps you to build relationships, build trust, and ultimately create alignment where people will buy from you. There's not a lot of selling. We don't I don't train on closing. I don't train on any sort of tricks. This is all about authentic conversations, curiosity, finding needs, telling some good stories every now and then, and being true to the integrity and the value that you provide to your clients. So that's the 7-module digital training, Soul-Centered Selling. You can learn more at www.soulcenteredselling.com. Go to the website there. There's another video that you can take a look at that really walks you through the whole idea and the whole philosophy behind soul-centered selling. I'm a fan of saying that the ego sells and the soul serves, and soul-centered selling is about being and coming from that point of service. So again, thank you for spending this time with me. My name is Mark D. Targiani, www.soulcenteredselling.com. Have a great day.